women's intuition, like when something feels off and something truly is a deal breaker. Like if someone says to you, I never want to have kids and I'm clear about that, and you do, that's a very different conversation than I'm in debt right now, I have a huge work ethic, I got a big vision, I'm clear about what I need to do. That wasn't a red flag.
Totally.
That was more like, this isn't my preference and my stuff is coming up versus need isn't being met, something feels off here. So for people with relationships or anything, yes, you don't want to be so controlling that things have to hit all your marks, but you also want to be really clear about your values and your standards and not settle.
Hello, I'm here today with my really good friend, Christine Hassler. She is an OG in the coaching industry. She's a real pioneer. She is the best-selling author of Expectation Hangover, the host of Over and On With It podcast. And in this episode, we really dive into being the queen and how to attract love in your life. Also, the repulsive behaviors that will prevent romantic love from coming in, how we can work with our inner child to heal things on so many different levels, and some of the red flags in the coaching industry and how we can really work with integrity and alignment as consumers and also as coaches. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups.
Please note that the opinions and perspectives of the guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm so happy to talk to you. Okay, so before we got started, you just revealed something to me, which I had no idea. I thought that you always had wanted to be a mom. I don't know why I made that assumption, which is probably cultural conditioning, so I'll just call myself out on that. But now you have this gorgeous little delicious pumpkin, and I want to know what happened to get to the place where you are having this experience with this whole new life that I didn't realize. I knew you were looking for your king. Yep. And my own internalized conditioning made the assumption that you were also wanting a baby. Isn't that interesting? Tell me more.
Well, I think the other reason you might have assumed that is because when we first met 10 years ago, that's right around when I was freezing my eggs.
Yes.
And so everyone assumed, oh, she's freezing her eggs because she really, really wants a baby. And that actually wasn't the reason that I was doing it. I was doing it because I know myself, and I know that I have a part of me that just really enjoys beating myself up. I work on that part. I understand that part has a protective purpose.
Yes.
I understand it's really trying to protect me. And I've learned how to work with it, and I've lowered the volume on that part over the years. But I know that there's a tendency for me to regret and go back and do the shoulda, coulda, woulda. And so I got divorced in my early 30s. And at 34, I was hearing, again, all the cultural stuff around you're 35, you're basically dead. You're geriatric. It's all trying to. And that was really getting to me. So there were two main reasons I decided to freeze my eggs. One, I did not want the pressure and stress of age and a biological clock to have me make decisions, specifically jumping into a relationship that wasn't quite right too soon.
Sure.
Because I think that a lot of times we can, whether it's having a baby or something else, when we have a timeline on ourselves, it can cloud our decision-making, and we can make decisions from more of that mental control place than that really intuitive, self-honoring place. So that was the number one reason. I just wanted to take time off the table. The second one was going back to that part of me that loves to regret and shoulda, coulda, woulda, and be mean to myself. I didn't want 42-year-old me to then want a baby and go, oh man, I wish I would have froze my eggs. And the funny thing was, I was assuming that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant in my 40s. But then lo and behold, I got pregnant completely naturally in my 40s very easily, which I feel so blessed about, and didn't even need to use my eggs. So the whole having a child thing for me, it was definitely not clear. even after I met my husband. Like, he was more clear and a yes before I was. And the reason why is because, again, like, I know myself. I'm with myself. I've been working on myself. I mean, I started therapy when I was 11.
Wow.
And the one thing about me that now I've just accepted is just a part of me and just part of how I'm wired is I worry. And at a young age, I paired worry and love very closely together. And I've been working on hooking them. And my spiritual practice really helps a lot. But the human Christine and how I'm wired and whatever karma I came into this world with, I tend to worry. And I was like, gosh, I know I'm going to love this kid so much. Can I handle that amount of love? Like, honestly, that was really what I had to reckon with. Like, can I handle, and I'm going to get choked up thinking about it because I just love her so darn much. Like, can I handle that amount of love? Because it's just, I knew it would be life-changing. And it's even more life-changing now that I've experienced it. And what finally got me to a yes was, do I want to make this choice from love or fear? And I really saw I was making it more from a place of fear. I was making it more from a place of, I don't know if I want to worry about that something that much or love something that big. And that's been my biggest growth edge, is like loving and opening my heart so much that it hurts, you know? And saying yes to that. And of course, in motherhood, I've really had to watch that hypervigilance and that anxiety and respond to it in different ways. Because when I moved, and I think this applies to any decision, when I moved fear out of the way, the answer became really clear.
Wow.
And also, she started coming to me. And so it was very clear to me. I knew I was having a girl. She told me her name. I did not name her. And it felt like a huge soul contract between her and I.
Wow. Oh, I'm so excited to see how that continues
Oh,
to
yeah.
play
Me
out
too.
as she gets older, because, you know, the older my girls get, I can just feel our relation. You know, of course, when they're little, there is that soul contract. But now that we just have real conversations, it's wild to just every now and again have them call me out on my stuff and, you know, and see how raising them is stretching me in these interesting ways and developing me. And so I'm excited for that for you. It's really amazing and something that I think nothing else would have brought that into my life in that way. So even though all relationships do that on some level.
All relationships do.
And I know that the last time I saw you in person, actually, you were pregnant. And you told me the amazing story of how you met your husband, how you met Steph. And it was actually very medicinal for me in that particular moment because we were in the deep throes of Mike's illness and then injuries. And I really needed the medicine of this story. So I'm wondering, could you tell the story, the version of it that you'd like to tell today?
I don't remember exactly what I said to you, but I think I have some idea, because I think it was that dinner and then the dinner you and I had in Austin. It was like those two conversations. So, well, like I said, I got divorced in my early 30s. I was single for a long time, nearly a decade. And it was a time when everyone was getting married and having babies. And again, I was face to face with, okay, like, what's the conditioning and what's my journey? And that was such an important lesson for me, and something that I really encourage people to like go within, like not to look outside on how things are supposed to be going, but you know, what's your individual unique journey and timeline? Because it's not a one size fits all approach. And I, you know, had my fair share of dating lessons. People would ask me, what's my type? And I'm like, line up all the men, I'll tell you exactly what issue I was working on at the time, and that was my type. You know, it was like clearing so much and healing so much. And I finally got to the point where I realized I was trying to control it. I was trying to make it happen, because I was trying to take all my entrepreneurial skills and shift them into calling and love. And, you know, that doesn't work. So, well,
Really?
I'm sure you're shocked. I'm sure you're shocked.
But it makes sense because you have been a very successful coach in this space for decades.
20 years.
Yeah. Keynote speaker. I mean, you've been one of the trailblazers and you've been very successful in your career. And so it makes sense that we would try to apply one skill set in one area to another skill set.
Yeah.
What did not work about applying your entrepreneurial skill set to finding your husband?
Not trusting, trying to make it happen, thinking it was all up to me, trying to be strategic, going to this dating coach or that dating coach and trying to do it a certain way, blocking off time that I was going to be in my feminine.
Okay, that's amazing. Like in your calendar?
Yeah.
And okay,
Yeah.
so what did that look like?
Oh, it could look like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, to be
So
totally
great.
honest. I was just like, I was so in my head trying to figure it out, and again, it was trying to make it happen. Yeah. So it's sort of like, okay, well, if I had, a new course I wanted to launch, like, what would I do? What would be the plan? There's a checklist,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
a plan. And it was more like the energy I was bringing versus specific things I was doing. And so anyway, I finally had a realization. It was like New Year's of 16, 17, turning into 18. And I was like, wow, I am just gripping on so tight. Once again, we're back to fear. I'm back in fear. Like, control comes so much from fear. If we think about where does control originate from? Well, in childhood, we aren't grasping for control. I mean, there's a natural stage of psychological development where we look at autonomy and we want sovereignty and all that, but like trying to control our lives and gripping on tightly, that happens, again, usually as a trauma response. The rug gets pulled out from under us. We live in chaos. Something doesn't go as planned, and we just overcompensate by really trying to control. So that was just one of my coping strategies, and it was a fear-based strategy. So when I realized that, because I've been a coach for so long, but sometimes I'm my slowest client. Like, like it takes me a second to realize what I'm doing in my own life. And I said, okay, I'm really going to surrender. I'm not going to pretend surrender. I'm actually going to surrender. So I had my list, like any woman who's calling in her man does, of like all the things that I wanted to call in for my man. And at the time I was living on the ocean in Encinitas, California, North County, San Diego. And I took my list out and I just set it on fire. And I said, okay, God, you pick. Because clearly my picker is off. Like, I had a series, dating wasn't going well. And that's when, and it was scary. Yeah. It was scary to be like, okay. Because I could feel the part of me going, and again, this applies to anything, not just calling in love. I could feel the part of me going, but I really need this thing. I surrender, but make sure he's this. I surrender, but this thing's super important. Do you know that, God? Like, do you? And so I thought, I had this image. This is so weird. I had this image of like when I go to a restaurant and I order my dinner, I don't go then follow the server into the kitchen and be like, did you get that? Did you get this one piece? Do you remember I wanted this? And then watch the cook. And I just order and trust it's coming.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to be more like, I'm eating in a restaurant when it comes to this. So it was that deep surrender of I trust. Yeah. The next week I get kicked out of my home in San Diego, which I loved. Yeah. Lived on the beach, loved it. Landlord was a bit crazy, and I actually mean that. Something was not okay. And said I was letting homeless people live on the property, said like all this, just it was so left field that I was like, okay, the universe is up to something because I am being ejected from my dream house. And I was like, okay, trust. And that's the thing. Like, people think surrender is a sexy, spiritual, like, oh, I surrender, I'm being the feminine. And no, Kali comes in and stuff gets destroyed and like stuff has to be rearranged. So often there is that breakdown and destruction where you're like in the eye of the storm going, okay, I surrender. And nothing seems to be making sense. It can feel very chaotic. And then that's when you actually know you're truly surrendering. And so I was in sorry, this is a long story.
This is great. I'm loving it.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. So
There's no hurry. We have plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
So I'm in this surrender, kicked out of my dream home, going, oh my gosh, I'm nearly 40 years old. Like, what's happening to my life? And I try to find another place, can't find anything. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to travel, which is so not me. Not me to like I'm a Virgo. I like to be grounded. I like to know where my jewelry is. Like I like to unpack. Even when like last night, I'm coming for 2 days. I am fully unpacked.
That's incredible.
I like to ground.
Wow.
And so but I just, again, surrendered, trusting. And so I packed my bags and went to Australia. Always had been there a bunch, like always had a pull there. Kind of thought I'd end up with an Australian. Get there, start dating this guy. That didn't turn out well. Come back, fractured my foot, was back in what am I doing? I'm living out of suitcases. And my friends said, we're going to be giving our lease up. Come look at our place back in San Diego. So I go to their house, and the male friend was sitting on his computer looking at his startup. And he said, Christine, can you come look at this webpage? Tell me what you think. And I sit down, and my now husband, Steph, was on the screen. His picture was there. And I said, I know him. And never had met him in my life, but it was some kind of soul recognition.
Wow.
And they said, well, he actually is Australian. I'm like, oh, forget it. Like, no, I'm writing off Australian men. No, I'm not doing it. And my friend said, no, he's really great. I'm like, yeah, right. Look at him. Like, he's got girls on rotation. Like, she's like, no, I think he's really calling in his person. And you're both going to be in Europe this summer. Let me introduce you. And this is where, like, when I got back from that Australia trip and I had kind of another pattern of a man who wasn't emotionally available for relationship, and I thought, but I'll change him. No.
No, he won't.
No. I was done with that. And I was really clear what my boundaries were. And I was really clear that, like, I wanted a man to be in the same place I was. Because I was really ready for, not necessarily marriage. That wasn't like a must for me, but committed long-term relationship. And so I said, ask him straight up. Like, is he calling in his person, or is he still dating? Because those are two very different energetics.
Yeah.
And she called him, and coincidentally, he had just come out of a meditation like a few days prior where he felt his person and was like, okay, I'm ready. And she connected us. We talked for 3 months over WhatsApp, and then met in Greece because we were both in Europe, and moved in together that day. And that was 6 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But the piece that I'll share, because that's the beautiful part.
Totally.
So the hard part and the part where I was like, really, God? Is one of the things that was on my list that I burned was I wanted him to be as financially successful or more than me. That was not the case with Steph. He was in debt. So not even like financially just below me, but actually like zero, like negatives.
Yeah.
And that was really challenging for me. Because here I met this man who I felt safe with. It was a different feeling. It wasn't like the fireworks, anxious attachment kind of thing. It felt very secure from the beginning and exciting.
Yeah.
But it felt healthy. But when I found that out, I was like, whoa, this is very confronting. And isn't it interesting how the universe like knows exactly what button to push to see if we're really willing to trust? And to see if we're really willing to shift. Because what I had to question is, okay, well, why don't I want a man less successful than me financially? Like, what
does that
is my
mean?
story around that? And like, why is it a problem if I'm the breadwinner? And what I got to is like purpose and drive is very attractive to me. And like, I knew I couldn't be with a dreamer. But what I saw in Steph is he had the ambition. He had the work ethic. He just didn't have the right support. And so I saw him working. I saw his ethic. He wasn't sitting in Starbucks just like hanging out thinking, I think I'll write a screenplay. No, I think I'll start a jewelry business. No, he was very clear about what his purpose was. Yeah. And so what came up inside of me was like, okay, let me just go and control. Like, I'll coach him.
So sexy.
Great for polarity in relationship. Excellent. If you want hotness in your relationship, definitely try to be a coach or therapist to your partner. It works every time. Okay, I hope everyone knows we're being totally sarcastic. And I knew that wouldn't work, and I didn't want to do that, Kate.
No.
Like, I just didn't want to. And so I was like, all right, well, if I'm more in this masculine energetic, and who's to say that's masculine, but if I'm more in this energetic of bringing in the money, how do I balance that inside of me and like have this polarity? And so what I decided to step into is fully being his muse, like fully being the inspiration, the support, the I believe in you, not the subservient, I don't have a voice, 1950s. No, we're not going back here. Right. We're actually going up. Like I shifted my frequency to love, to non-judgment, and to really believing in him. And it was such a great experiment inside myself because it was like, wow, have I ever done that for myself? Like that level just really believed in my own worth and ability.
Yeah.
So it shifted us both. And by just believing that and introducing him to people, and like I'd kind of set some things up, be like, here, I'd hand him a ball and he would run with it. He would just run and then find another ball. And now we're at the point after we had our daughter, he really took the lead, and it is not even an issue anymore. Yeah. So I'm glad that, I allowed myself to feel that, and we talked about it. I was like, this is not what I wanted, and this is very confronting for me. But I'm glad I didn't let that, prevent me from stepping into this love.
100%, because it's like 6 years later.
Yeah.
That's not that long in terms of your lifetime. Right. And like, imagine if you would have missed out on this love because it didn't look right on paper.
Right.
And I had a similar situation when I met Mike in certain ways, not really, but like, and then later on when he was sick and injured so many times, I really was like in this dynamic of resentment. Mm-hmm. And hearing you tell that story made me realize that the piece that I had forgotten was the like deep commitment and trust and believing in him. And I was so tired and resentful that I had lost track of that. And so that dinner with you was actually a major turning point in our relationship.
I'm so glad to
thank you
hear
for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being willing to hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, letting go of resentment, especially when we believe we have a right to have it, which in so many ways you did. Like if we just talk facts, it was hard.
It was hard.
It was really hard, and you were holding a lot.
But just because things are hard doesn't mean, listen, I think that all emotions are actually useful, and I don't regret my resentment. However, it's also, there are so many different responses we can have to any given scenario. And like, I was just sick of my resentment, which is why I was available to hear it. So yeah. I was just like that. Now I'm boring myself with this same old story.
Yeah.
Okay. This is so great. So I know that you work actually with women around finding their king, and Steph comes in and does a little bit of that.
He does
in
it
the
with
program.
Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And he is so wonderful. I've had minimal interactions with him, but the interactions I've had, it was just like, what a beautiful man.
Yeah. He really does.
I'm so glad you two found each other.
He does create safe space for women. He really does.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a man in this space that doesn't have leaky energy.
Not at all. No. And I've listened to him on podcasts and like insightful, wise, all of those things. Clean energy. So great. And I think that we need that sort of modeling to heal some of our own patterning that's maybe not so healthy. So you mentioned control was like a real thing of yours and moving from fear.
Yeah.
What is one or two other things that you see women doing habitually that is likely keeping love from them?
Oh, yeah.
Romantic love.
Great question.
Well, and it's probably keeping all the love from them.
Yeah, love, money, your friends, better relationships,
yes. What
your
are
job,
our repulsive behaviors?
What are our repulsive behaviors? Okay. That's a super great question. I just want to go back and like backtrack for a second and say something I think is relevant and important about not settling.
Great.
Steph not being in a financial place, that's very different than a red flag. And so I would just want to make sure we highlight that women's intuition, like when something feels off and something truly is a deal breaker. Like if someone says to you, I never want to have kids and I'm clear about that, and you do, that's a very different conversation than I'm in debt right now. I have a huge work ethic. I got a big vision. I'm clear about what I need to do. That wasn't a red flag.
Totally.
That was more like, this isn't my preference and my stuff is coming up versus something like a need isn't being met. Something feels off here. So for people with relationships or anything, yes, you don't want to be so controlling that things have to hit all your marks, but you also want to be really clear about your values and your standards and not settle.
Great. Such a good clarification.
Yeah. So the things that are repulsive.
Back to repulsive behavior.
Yes. So I want to elaborate on that control one first, because one of the biggest things that we hear, especially for women that join us for Be the Queen, that's our program for women calling in their partner, is I need to be more in my feminine. I'm too much in my masculine. And my response to that is usually, no, you're not. You're actually in hypervigilance. You're dysregulated, and you're in an adaptive pattern. Because true masculine isn't being busy, isn't being stressed, isn't having adrenal fatigue. And so many women are just controlling and are so busy and be like, I need to be more my feminine. I need to get out of my masculine. No, you actually need to deal with what is creating that hypervigilance and trauma response inside of you. Because for so many people, we're talking about women in this case, something happens in our life where it's not safe to be ourselves anymore. It's not safe to really surrender, to be in our authentic expression. Maybe we're told we're too much. Maybe we're told we're not enough, or we're not even told that, but we infer it from what happens in our life. And so we develop an overcompensation strategy and we over-adapt. Superpower of the feminine, adaptivity, but we can take it way into the shadows and be over-adaptable and busy ourselves. So oftentimes that busyness that women think is being in their masculine energy is really dysregulation, disguised as I'm just like really busy.
Yeah.
So with the control and with the like, I'm too much in my masculine, I need to get my feminine, we can talk about feminine energy, but it's really more about healing those patterns inside of you, nervous system regulation, which I know you're so brilliant at teaching, and somatically being in a different place inside of ourselves. So we're not wearing this mask that may appear masculine, but is really more dysregulation.
Yes. And one of the things you bring so beautifully into that is inner child work and also internal family systems, IFS. Yeah. And that's a body of work that I have benefited from hugely. I think it's actually quite intertwined with nervous system healing.
Yes.
I think fundamentally it's actually the same thing in a way.
Yeah.
And so can you tell me more about how inner child work loops in around sort of dysregulated, controlling, hypervigilant behavior?
Well, this is great because it segues also to the other thing I was going to say, other than control, in terms of the things that keep a really healthy partnership away, is unresolved childhood stuff, which isn't a surprise to most people watching or listening. Yeah. And so many women that we help and be the queen say, I've worked on myself, I've done all this work, and it still isn't happening. I'm like, yes, you have. You totally have. And let's integrate it. Let's really integrate the work so you're super conscious about how the subconscious patterns are playing out. So as children, we have really specific needs. Some are specific just to development. Like if we look at Erikson's stages of development, if we look at attachment theory, that apply to everyone. There's certain needs that we all have. Yeah. And there's needs that are unique to us. So, for me, I had the developmental need as a toddler to exercise my autonomy. So did you. But for me specifically, I also was a highly sensitive kid. I still am a highly sensitive person, a huge empath. Yeah. And I had different needs because of that. So again, we're looking at just the needs that are universal and that are our own individual needs. And whatever needs weren't met, we subconsciously will go out and seek. And the people we tend to do that with are people that remind us, consciously or subconsciously, mostly subconsciously, of our family of origin. Yeah. And it's not so exact that, I had an emotionally unavailable dad, I'm a heterosexual woman, so I'm going to attract an emotionally unavailable man. That happens all the time.
Yes,
we see that. Does. But it can be super subtle. It can be more your relationship with your mom. It could be you never really felt like you belonged in a friend group, so there's an insecurity. Yep. And you will go after people that kind of make you feel insecure. You'll go after a super confident person where you don't feel enough on some level. So it can come from a variety of places. So we really need to look at, okay, where is my inner child picking? Like I realized there was a phase in my 30s where I was dating a certain type of person. Same person, different face. And when I did some inner child work around it, I realized, oh my gosh, my 14-year-old is picking. My 38-year-old is not dating right now at all. She's not involved. This is completely the 14-year-old who was a late bloomer, who never felt the boys liked her, who just wanted the popular, charming guy and never felt like she was enough. And so that's who I was dating. Yeah. And like my adult self, when the relationships would fall apart, I'd be like, why didn't I see that coming? Like, why did I even go after this?
Yeah.
But it wasn't my present day self choosing. So that's why inner child work is so important, because we meet those needs. First we figure out what the needs are.
Yep.
We figure out what the beliefs are that form from not getting those needs met. What emotions never got to be expressed and released. Help update those beliefs, understand which protective parts are working with the inner child to create things like sabotaging and people pleasing and all kinds of things in our life, and then meet those needs ourselves and find ways to get those needs met in our relationships in current day adult ways.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I know that you actually walk people through doing that in group settings.
Yes, we have an inner child course as well. Yeah.
Do you ever work with clients one-on-one? You do?
Yeah, I do.
You have one-on-one clients.
I
That's
do.
so cool.
I always will. I feel like my first client was in 2004. And I feel like, if you're a comedian that never goes back and does like the small
totally.
stages, it's just part of the craft.
You lose your edge.
Yeah.
So how did you find coaching? Because you were like way ahead of the curve on that.
It found me.
What
It
happened?
totally found me. So the insecure, never fit in, I hate Christine club, like that part of me, the way she compensated was overachieving. And so I graduated high school early, I graduated college early, and I moved out to LA when I was 20 and got a job. Yeah. Got a job working in the entertainment industry. Yeah, I thought I was 20 going on like 35. I thought, like, I look back, I'm like, I couldn't even legally drink. What was I doing? But I felt like I was just ready. I hated college, couldn't wait to get out of there, hated high school, and just was ready to go prove myself.
Yeah.
And got a job in the entertainment industry, was an agent, worked my way up, was the youngest ever female agent, and was dating the head of a movie studio, and was going to Oscars and Golden Globes and private jets and celebrities and all the things, and I still wasn't happy. And I just, P.S., I had been on antidepressants since I was 11. Wow. And I can't remember when it was, maybe in my 20s, I threw in anti-anxiety meds like benzos as well. Mm-hmm. And that was I just sort of thought that I needed them. That was just part of my story. And I just started realizing, wow, like money and fame don't equal happiness. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like this industry. It doesn't feel safe to me. I'm stressed out. And like, what am I doing? And so I quit my job. My fiance broke up with me. I was estranged from my family. I was not well with how I was treating my body. And financially, I was trying to keep up my fancy lifestyle when I was like working as a personal trainer and a hand model.
I never knew you were a hand model. I love that factoid so much.
I was a hand model.
You do have nice hands.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so great when you go into like a body modeling agency and they look at your whole body and they're like, I'll take your hands. I'm like, all right, well, something.
Great.
I don't know if it exists anymore because with Photoshop and like you probably don't even need it. Yeah.
Who knows?
You don't even need it.
I actually do know. I know one other hand model.
Yeah.
Former.
Yeah. I mean, it was legit. I'd go in and like
100%. Did you walk around with gloves to protect them?
I didn't take it that seriously. I had like 7 gigs, but I mean, I think that's enough to count.
For sure. No one's ever paid me to take pictures of my hands. So
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were pulling it together.
I was pulling it together.
Personal trainer, hand model,
all
trying
the
to keep up your fancy life.
Trying to do it all, and then just realized like traditional therapy wasn't working for me anymore. The guy I was dating at the time was an addict, so my codependent patterns were like doing well. And she told me why I went to see this life coach. I'm like, a life coach? Like, what's that? She's like, I don't know. She's not a therapist. She's a little different. You see her in her house. Her name's Mona. She lives in the Valley. And I'm like, the Valley? I'm not going to.
You see her in her house. Her name's Mona. She lives in the Valley.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, you right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I was really desperate. And,
you
and I
needed
trusted
something.
my friend. I was like, all right, I'll go see Mona. So I drive over the hill to the Valley. I was living in LA and knock on her door and she opens and like no makeup, sweatpants.
Great.
But just this beautiful energy, blonde hair, blue eyes like you, like just this light. And I kind of didn't know what to do with her. because I was used to more traditional, buttoned up, we sit like this kind of things. And she's like, come on, I'm gonna put you in JJ's room. JJ's her son. And I walk in, and it's race car bunk beds. And she's like, you sit there. And I was like, oh my God.
So good.
She read me. She was so into, I say was because unfortunately she passed away at 50, like super young. Anyway, big loss for me. Like one of my biggest losses because I saw her for 14 years. Wow. And she trained me. And anyway, I'm jumping ahead to the story. Yeah. But she was the first person, like in a clinical sense, that didn't look at me like I was broken.
Wow.
And that's something that was such a life-changing thing for me and something that I really feel like is my number one value as a coach is to be in that energy of compassion and non-judgment and never – I can have empathy for people, but never see them as broken.
Yeah.
And this is why so many coaches and therapists burn out because subconsciously they're seeing that and they like over-invest and they end up sympathizing and taking on stuff. And Mona really taught me how to be a channel and how to sit in love and how to see someone as not broken.
Yeah.
And anyway, working with her, decided I wanted to write a book about the 20-something experience. I ended up getting a book deal at like 24, interviewed people for the book. They kept saying, aren't you a coach? I was personal training at the time. People just wanted to talk to me. They didn't want to work out. And so finally I thought, well, maybe there's something here. Like maybe my mom was a therapist, so I always did not think that would be my path. And not that I didn't want to follow in her footsteps, but I thought I'd do something different. So I just was like, okay, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I came to Mona and I said, because I was in my career crisis. I was really trying to figure it out. And I said, I think I'm supposed to do what you do. I think I'm supposed to be a coach. And she goes, I know. And I said, why didn't you tell me? She goes, that's not my job.
Yeah.
It's for you to figure it out. So she's like, now that you know, let's go. And she said, just a warning. If you say yes to this, your whole life is going to be learning. You are not going to be able to stay asleep. Are you ready to permanently wake up? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, no. Wait a minute. I'm asking you a really important question. Are you ready? And I was like, I think so. At the time, I had no idea what I was saying yes to, but I see now.
Are you ready to permanently wake up?
Yeah, she's like, you can't go back to sleep once you say yes to this or you will be a fraud.
And there it is.
And I was like, oh.
So you were 24.
Yep.
You were 24 and she trained you.
She trained me, and then I went to different life coaching programs. I got my master's from the University of Santa Monica in spiritual psychology and consciousness, health, and healing, and then I was on faculty there. I've sat at, different teachers. Like, I've sat at the feet of masters, people that, aren't Insta-famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we live in such a weird time right now with social media where anyone can, with good marketing skills and good photo shoots, make it seem like anything. Yep. And it's weird.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, like having been at this for a long time and having quite a depth of training, having trained hundreds of coaches yourself, what are some of the things that you see out there that as consumers we should be keeping an eye out for that are not the best coaching practices?
Yeah. I was at an event last week with Dean Grazioso and Tony Robbins. And Dean was talking about how for so long people wanted aspiration, but now they're really looking for direction. So like people wanted to get on the Titanic and like have a great time and have an amazing room, but now they want lifeboats. Like they want the actual real deal and the actual how-to. And I think what happened with so much of the influencer and specifically coaching industry is it became very aspirational. It became very like, you can help millions of people. You can do it from Bali. Like you can, and it became about how many people you could help. I'm putting help in quotes. Basically how many people you get to follow you versus like, what's the actual work you're doing? A, inside yourself. And B, like, how are you actually serving people? And so what I've seen in the coaching industry is a desire to be big, a desire to make a lot of money, a desire to make a lot of impact, but people often define that as like having a lot of followers. I'm like, what does impact really mean? And so, and I'm not saying that's true for all coaches, but I see that trend in the industry. And I think what the consumer is starting to realize is like, I want someone I can relate to. Sure, I want some aspiration. Like I personally would never hire a coach whose life I don't want.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Like there is some degree of aspiration to it. But when it seems like I'm way up here and I'm going to look down and help you way down here, it always has felt like a mismatch to me. And so I think it's very important to feel a resonance with someone, to feel like how I want people to feel with me is we're on the same path. I'm just a little bit farther along and I'm going to, help you.
Yeah. Like,
down
hey,
the road.
there's a route over there and like watch out at the switchback because, there's a rattlesnake.
Don't step in that pothole. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. And so I think for anyone looking to join a program or hire a coach, like really ask yourself, like, how does my body feel with this person? Do I feel safe? Even if you're
really
not,
big one.
That's the number one.
Yeah.
Even if you're not physically in the room with them, like through video or someone's Instagram, like, do you feel like you could walk up to that person and be like, hi, and introduce yourself and not feel less than in any way?
Yes.
That is
so big.
Huge. And the tendency I see of people like wanting a quick fix is starting to actually go away. People are really realizing that actually there isn't a quick fix. Like this whole human thing, it's one big course. It's one big school.
Yeah.
And the stuff you're teaching and the stuff that I teach as well about like really not rehashing our past for years and years and years and years, but healing it.
Yeah.
Bringing, that inner child and all parts of us into the present, learning how to regulate ourselves, learning how to update our beliefs. And most savvy consumers know that isn't a quick fix.
Yep.
And that no one's going to do that for them. So it's really looking for the people that are going to empower you to become your own best coach, really to like teach you the tools how to empower yourself.
I love that. And then on the other side, because I know we have people who listen in who are coaches.
Yes.
What are some of the things that we could be asking ourselves? I don't identify as a coach. I never was trained as a coach specifically, though I have 100 million trainings of certain kinds. So, but I'm in this industry.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that we could be doing or asking ourselves to make sure that we are really delivering at a level of integrity, at a level of value that is in alignment with who we really are?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've seen you not coach people and you're amazing. So I don't know what you want to call it, but you definitely have.
I don't know what I would call it, but
that ability. Oops,
thank
I hit
you.
the microphone. You definitely know how to ask amazing questions and reflect things back to people in a really loving, resonant way. I've experienced it myself and I've seen you do it with people. So it's definitely part of who you are and how you serve. In terms of coaches, so anyone asking that question, like you're in the right place. Like you're off to a great start.
That's such a good point. It reminds me of, I think Glennon Doyle shared, she was like speaking at a parenting conference and all the, of course, anxious moms are like asking her these questions.
Yeah.
She was like, listen, if you're here, like you're good.
Yeah.
You don't even need to be worrying about it because your kids are in great hands if you're at a parenting conference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you actually care.
Yeah. Totally.
So if you're asking yourself, like, am I in integrity? You probably are.
Yeah.
I think sort of what I see is kind of these two polarities, the like being a little too much in our ego, a little too much of the like, look at me, I'm an influencer, and that whole archetype over here where we're not asking, am I actually connecting? Am I actually serving? Or am I making people feel worse by like being over here showing, there's kind of a show-off energy sometimes that I see. And again, this can sound really judgmental and critical, but actually I'm coming from an observant place of just what I see and what I've had a lot of people report back to me about like being on social media and following people that should make them feel better, but then they just kind of feel worse.
Yeah.
And then there's this other extreme of people that really have huge hearts and are the empaths and are the highly sensitive people and deal with imposter syndrome. And actually need more ego, like need more of the like, I do have a mission. I am here. Like, I know that my voice matters. So where we want to be is in the middle, or even just off that spectrum completely, and more in a
Yeah, I love that. Yes, totally.
more in a balanced place of, what are the unique gifts that want to express through me? What are the experiences I've had in my life? And also the unique talents and gifts that I have that could serve people and that will serve people. And how does that want to express through me? When I train coaches, I always say, don't do it like me or anybody else, because it won't work.
Right.
It won't work. We can maybe model like strategies and funnels and those types of things, but in terms of our essence, it really is, that needs to be so authentic, because I know people's BS meters are going way up.
They are, which is good.
Very good.
I think it's good because it will bring out like a truth and a resonance in the industry that's good for everybody.
Yes.
What do you think? Somebody asked me this question the other week, and they said, like, how can I be in integrity out here coaching when, like, I'm only a couple of steps? Like, I haven't created every single thing I want. I'm maybe only 1 or 2 steps ahead of my ideal client. And honestly, I think the sort of ahead thing is a bit of an illusion anyway, but you know what I'm saying. Like, just in some sort of framework. What do you recommend for people who are getting started early days in coaching, who are struggling with that imposter syndrome, maybe are feeling like, oh no, my life and my business are not perfect. Do I even deserve to be supporting anyone in their journey?
Yeah. Well, that conversation reveals a limiting belief about what our job as coaches are.
Yes, I love that.
So if we believe our job as coaches is to tell people how to do things, to me, that's not the essence of coaching. Our job as coaches is to hold a really safe space for people, to have lots of compassion and understanding, and to ask really great questions, and to understand someone's model of the world. Like, even if you have the business and the life and whatever, the way you did it may not apply at all to the person you're coaching. So caveat, if someone is coming specifically for business coaching, and they're coming to you and saying, have you done this? And that's specifically what they're looking for, then you're probably not the right fit.
Sure.
But in most coaches that I know that want to start out really coaching people, helping people unpack their limiting beliefs, helping people understand where their thoughts are getting in their way, helping people see how their past may still be impacting their present. And most of all, just really creating a safe container for people to be
100%.
seen and heard. Like, we cannot underestimate the power of that. I think sometimes there's this expectation as a coach, you're supposed to have these zingers that you just like drop, and you're supposed to just, know the answer and tell people what to do. And that can be powerful.
Sure.
And what's more powerful is what's powerful as well is holding a loving space for someone to come to their own answers. But if we're too caught up in like imposter syndrome, or I'm not this or I'm not that, then we're actually going to be in our own head too much, and we're not going to serve well.
Well, it actually comes back to the beginning of our conversation around control.
Exactly.
And surrender.
Yep.
I mean, it really seems like it's the same skill set.
Yep.
To trust that and connecting to somebody and relating to them at the level of their power and their wholeness, as opposed to relating to somebody at the level of a problem or brokenness.
Well, the whole I'm not here, can I coach people? When I first started, I was 24, something like that. And, Mona said to me, because I had the same question. She's like, just coach people in their 20s. Just coach people that are going through their quarter life crisis. Right. You've gotten to the other side of yours. You have some wisdom about it. Like, stick to what you know. And before I had a kid, like if someone said, I really want someone to coach me on parenting, I could do some of that. Right. But until I had the actual experience, like there was a lot I didn't know I didn't even know.
Yes. Which brings me to what I wanted to say. Right. And I'm curious about this because my current coach has been my coach since 2016.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes, she's amazing. And she's not a mom. And yet I have become such a better parent
Oh, I'm
from
sure.
being coached by her, which is really interesting. So it's a perfect example of what you were saying
Yeah.
that like, first of all, I actually do have a coach that I go to every now and again when it's like a very specific parenting thing.
issue. That's different.
But globally,
Yes.
my healing work with her, I am like a way better mother.
Absolutely.
Even though she's not a mother. And I think it's just exhibits what you were saying that like people aren't coming to you necessarily for like, tell me exactly how. I mean, that's more of a consultant or a strategist versus a coach. She holds space for my healing.
Exactly.
And asks brilliant questions and mirrors back and helps me see, you know, when I'm being she calls it the wounded daughter.
Yeah.
So that I can raise girls who are more connected to themselves, I suppose I would say.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just share that. And then you're obviously very psychic because you started talking about parenting. Do you think that really helps as a coach, cultivating your connection with your intuition?
Yes.
And how have you done that?
Listening. Really, truly, the way that I've developed my intuition is not trying to come up with the answer. And this is something, when we train coaches, I see this so often, is I see them in a session and they're listening, but they're also thinking about how they're going to respond. And this is true for any communication, not just coaching, but especially in coaching. And this is where like imposter syndrome can really get in the way and self-confidence can get in the way. And what I really have always done in the coach is tried to get myself out of it as much as I can and really be open and really just listen and be available and trust when stuff comes through.
Yeah.
Like really, really trust that. And it's definitely something I've developed over time.
Yeah.
And, you know, one way it doesn't develop is not responding to it. You know, like hearing something or getting something and not sharing it or not taking action, not just a coaching session.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually being like, wow, this feels like something I should listen to.
So when we use it, the channel gets stronger. Is that what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing you say?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Christine, this was amazing. And I really feel like this conversation was about surrendering control and like leaning into love and trust.
Yeah.
Is there anything like final words you would want to pass along to someone listening around that particular invitation?
Well, I mean, my biggest message, and this so much comes from my story, is you're not broken and there's nothing wrong with you. And I can tell you, I have coached, I don't even know how many, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, I don't even know, a lot. Yeah. And I have yet to meet one person who has thought, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm totally great. Like, unless they're completely in denial, there is this sense of like, I'm not enough. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. It can be really subtle or it can be really overt. So I just want people to know that's a human condition. Like we all feel our flavor of it on some way or another. And the biggest spiritual practice I've had, even more than surrender, is acceptance. Like I talked about my worry thing. Can I tell you how much money and time I've tried to spend changing it? It's been so much easier to go, oh, there's me worrying again. I must really care about this.
Wow.
This must really mean something to me. Okay, what do I want to do with this worry? And instead of being like, oh, I'm worried, I need to make it go away. Like, what book do I need to read? Do I need ketamine? Like, what do I need to do? You know?
For sure, ketamine.
Yeah, for sure. That will solve everything. So just coming to a place of, and this is so great for our relationships too. You know, one of the reasons that I don't get triggered by certain people, I love the Ram Dass quote, if you think you're evolved, go home for Thanksgiving, is accepting who people are. Like when my husband doesn't put the dry dishes away before he stacks more wet ones on top of them.
That's me in our marriage.
We would never live together. Our friendship would be over.
Mike is also a Virgo. So
Mike and I need to have a support group.
This feels really familiar. You can text him
I'm just
about
like,
the dishes.
These are dry. Why are you putting wet ones on top of them? It's like,
they'll dry eventually all together.
oh my God. And it's just like more chaos. I don't understand. I'd love to live in your world for just a day. I'd probably have a lot, you know, I could just leave the dishes stacked on the
I
sink.
think there's more surrender.
Yeah. There's more surrender available. Yeah. But my point, other than revealing my own rigidity, is,
I mean, it is logical.
yeah, it seems logical. But my point in that is I can look at that and go, ugh, so annoying. Like, or I can just be like, that's Steph being Steph.
Yeah.
Like, he's being consistent. Or when a family member is doing their thing, do I get dysregulated? Do I allow the same inner child trigger to come up? Or do I go, that's them being them?
Yeah.
Now, again, I want to make the distinction between toxic abusive behavior and someone just having their quirks and their patterns and whatever it is. Because this over here, we need to remove ourselves from and have firm boundaries about. But things inside ourselves and things, in other people that are more just sort of those just sort of kind of ways we are, ways someone are, they're not going to change. If we can come to acceptance, it just makes everything a lot easier because nothing heals in judgment. Things only heal and shift in love. If we're judging ourselves or anyone else, it's not going to shift. But if we can love, and acceptance to me is an expression of love. If we can really accept ourselves and others, then actual transformation can happen.
So powerful. Thank you, Christine. This has been so wonderful.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for being
Went
here.
by so fast.
I know.
My goodness.
I know. Where can people come find you to connect and learn more?
Well, Christine Hassler's my website.
Great.
I need to update it.
It's perfect.
It's perfect the way it is.
Yes.
It's low on my priority list. And then Instagram, I'm on sometimes.
Yep.
Pretty consistent there. And the best place is my podcast. So over and on with it. I've had it for nearly 10 years. Yeah, close to 10 years. And I coach people live on the air. When I was thinking about service, to coach with me now privately is an investment. And I was like, well, what kind of free product can I offer people on a consistent basis that basically is like coaching with me? And I was like, well, I'm just going to coach people live on the air. And I had so many people in the industry say, don't do that. That's going to be hard. People aren't going to be vulnerable. You're going to I had so many people try to tell me not to do it. And I was like, no. This feels good. Like I see in group settings how much people learn watching someone else get coached because their defenses are down. So much gets into the subconscious.
Yes, that theta brain state. Wild.
It's so wild and it's so receptive.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to do this. So I coach people. I have interviews as well on Saturdays. You've been on it.
Thank you.
But I coach people live on the air, unscripted, unproduced. And so it's a great way to be a fly on the wall for a coaching session. We cover everything. There's nothing we haven't covered.
Yeah, and to receive the abundance that someone else is receiving, like it's for all of us. It really breaks down the lie of separation.
Yeah, and the vulnerability people share, it's just beautiful.
So great. Okay, amazing. So all that'll be in the show notes.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you so
Christine.
much. Thank you.
I'm teaching a brand new productivity training called Plenty of Time. And in it, we're going to uncover the 3 mainstream productivity hacks that are keeping you overwhelmed, distracted, stressed, and busy unnecessarily, and what to do instead. To get yourself signed up for this free live event that is only happening one time this year, head over to katenorthrup.com/time.